presentations for WOC 2020 virtual. It's great that you are online. We will start within a couple of minutes to allow everybody to be online and to join us for this webinar. Wait a few minutes and please, if you have any questions throughout the webinar, please ask them via the question box, which you find on the left side of your screen. The thing is that we really want to get your questions, so please don't be shy. Ask as many questions as you want. That is the whole purpose of this webinar. So we will start in a couple of minutes. So please stay with us.
Not started yet. There's just a thing. I'm going to start.
We already have 60 people online, so that's great. Welcome to everybody that just arrived in the call. We are so happy that you are joining us. So we are able to explain how easy it is for you to record your presentation the coming weeks. And we are grateful that you are taking the time to learn from us. And we hope this webinar will be of interest to you. Any questions that you have throughout the webinar, please feel free to use the chat box, the question box that you find on the right side of your screen. That's helpful for us as well, that we know what the questions are and that we can help you. Welcome to everybody that just arrived in the call. We start in a couple of minutes to allow more people to join. We are now at 74 participants, which is great. This is the second webinar that we do. We already had one earlier today. So you are in the second one, which is always better than the first one. So you made a good choice to join now. We hope it will be of interest to you. And ask as many questions as you want. Okay, I think it's time to start. We are at 4:30 Dutch time, of course, for many of us outside of the Netherlands. It's later or earlier. We appreciate that you are on this call, and we hope it will be of interest to you in help you prepare your online presentation. I will give the word to Diane Zaleski, who is helping in coordinating the scientific program of this online event. Diane, please tell us all about what we can expect this afternoon.
Thank you very much, Mariska. First of all, I would like to wish you all welcome to this instructional webinar on how to prepare your presentation for the World Ophthalmology Congress 2020 virtual, brought to you by the International Council of Ophthalmology. We thank you very much for taking the time to join this session. Let's have a look at our agenda for today. So our session will take 1 hour. We will have a first introduction by Dr. Ivo Kosur, who is the CEO of ICO. I will then give you a little bit more information about WOC 2020 virtual, and we will then dive into the core of this presentation, the scientific program, and of course your presentation. The webinar will be divided in two main parts. A first part on how to record your presentation from the comfort of your own home. That will be presented by our team of online recordings experts. And then for the second part, we will welcome Avinash Chandahana, and he will give us more information on how to maximize your presentation for an online environment. And as you can see, we will have opportunities for questions, especially between parts 1 and 2 of this webinar, and also at the closing of this session. So as Mariska mentioned, please do not hesitate to just send us your question using the chat box. And for now, we would like to welcome Dr. Ivo Kosur and leave the floor to him.
Thank you, Diane, and hello and welcome to you all. I would like to thank you for participating in our first virtual World Ophthalmology Congress. We have a great team with us today who will advise how to prepare and record our presentations. Again, thank you for being with us and for your important contributions to make this Congress an outstanding educational success. I would now like to ask our team to guide us through the presentations. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ivo. So a word now on WOC 2020 virtual, indeed the first time ever in the WOC history. It will be a virtual learning experience. And if I can just ask my team to go to the next slides, so we will show you a little bit more about that. Almost there. So the WOC, and I think the slide will be coming up very shortly, the WOC 2020, indeed, a virtual learning experience. It will be a whole new world on how to explore your educational content that you would normally see during the Congress. So here is the little glimpse at how the platform will look like. In the platform, when you connect as a delegate, regular delegate, you will find all the content that you would normally see at the Congress, meaning recorded sessions with live question and answers, also recorded sessions with comments. We will touch on that a little bit later in the next slides. Also all the abstract and research that was submitted. We had record-breaking numbers of submissions this year. So e-posters, oral presenters, and instruction courses that were selected will also be presented in this virtual environment. We'll of course have the same support of our industry with satellite symposiums and a virtual exhibition. So if we can go to the next slide, an important point that will start our presentation is that all the presentations will be pre-recorded. And from there, we will have two types of different sessions. We will have a few sessions that will be selected to also be presented live during the 26th to the 29th June. So if your session is selected for a live time slot, your recording will be played at that live time, and we will also ask you, as well as the moderators of your sessions, to be present to answer questions and answers live from the audience that will connect to your session that day. Of course, we have more than 220 sessions, part of WOC 2020 virtual, and not all of them will be presented live. So for the other sessions that will be recorded, there will be an opportunity for delegates to leave questions and comments, but there will not be a live interaction there. And the next slide is giving you even more information about this. So indeed, for live Q&A sessions, speakers and moderators will receive an invitation, and this is coming in the next few days via a separate invite, and then the full live session will be recorded and also shared and be available on the WOC virtual platform in the coming days. And for recorded sessions, we will ask the moderators and speaker to book a time slot to record a panel discussion that will be added to the end of their session. Once again, these instructions will all be given to you, to the moderators and the speakers in any day now, very, very shortly, and you will receive all the instructions that we all mentioned today in a written form for clarity. And now, without further ado, I will pass the floor to my team member here, Ron, who will explain you a bit more about how to record your presentation.
Thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Ron Westerhout, and I'm going to tell you more about the process of your pre-recorded presentation. If you can go to the next slide, please. This week you will receive an email with a link to the online agenda where you can book your time slot for your recorded presentation, as you can see here on the right. Please choose a date and time that suits you the best. But please note, one time block is 30 minutes, and this is intended for one recorded presentation. If you have multiple presentations, please book one time block per presentation. So if you have 3 presentations, this means 3 time blocks. After choosing the appropriate time block, please fill in the text blocks. This is important for us to communicate with you about your recording. We also ask you to give a short description of your presentation. This will be used as a brief explanation when archiving your pre-recorded presentation. The recordings will take place from May 8 till June 8, so you can book your time slot in that period. Next slide please. The preparation and uploading of your slides. Before you will upload your presentation, please prepare your slides, including a title slide, so the presentation plus session title, and disclosure slide, and a short personal introduction. Please introduce your name, your position, your credentials, your institution, your city, and your country. 5 days before your recording, before your booked time slot, you will receive an email with a unique link to join the recording on the day of your booking, and a unique link where you can upload your presentation. So here you can upload your slides, but also if you have a video, your video, but also voting questions if you have. In this email you will also have tips for the day of your recording, including light, sound, and the background of your room where you will do your presentation. Next slide please. Step 3, recording of your presentation. Before your recording, make sure to upload your slides that you can do in the unique link that we sent you 5 business days before. On the day of the recording, please be on time. We have your time slot of 30 minutes. In this 30 minutes, you need to do your recording of your presentation. Please dress yourself as you would do for a physical meeting. Prepare your environment and equipment. So please prepare a quiet room, a clean wall background, a good working camera and microphone, if not integrated in your computer, and a stable internet connection. Our team members will welcome you and will guide you through your recording session. When we will start recording your presentation, we will put your presentation live. We will give you control over your PowerPoint. This will be exactly the same as how you will operate your presentation from home. You can use your keyboard with the arrows to go to the next slide and to the previous slide. Also, you can use your mouse pointer as a pointer. This will also be shown in the recording. If you make a mistake during your presentation, this is of course no problem. You can just do this again, but please indicate this clearly to the technician. All the above things will of course be clearly explained again on the day of your recording by our team member. When the recording is finished, we will congratulate you with your presentation and we finish your recording. Now we'll give it back to Diana.
Thank you very much, Ron. So this is indeed a few simple steps to explain to you how we will go about recording your presentation so that you can still share your knowledge from the comfort of your own home. So we now have time for questions. We will do now a small interruption for questions and answers, of course, before we dive into the second part of our webinar. So any questions you may have about this new format that is indeed new for a lot of us, new format of presentation, please go ahead and include them now using the chat box that is on the right side of your screen. So first question, the link to book your recording slots will be sent this Friday. So we mentioned that the recordings will take place between the 8th of May until the 8th of June. So of course we do encourage you to book your preferred time slot as soon as possible. And we have really a wide array of timing. So when you go on the online booking tool, you will see that the timings are indicated in Central European time. And we have recording time slots from 9 in the morning to 7 in the evening. So a lot of time slots for you to choose from. However, once you choose one, we do ask you to commit to that particular time slot. Is it possible to have a virtual background? Ron, could you maybe advise on this one?
Yeah, this is not possible. We need to do it with the background of the room.
Okay, so indeed another important point that we just touched on is really the importance of a clean and neutral background, because it will not be possible to include a virtual background with your camera. Any special instructions regarding videos, Ron?
This will be also in the email that you will send out Friday. So
all right, if we can give, yeah, go ahead, Ron.
We always recommend to use an MP4 file, not a YouTube link. All files need to be a real file, so it needs to be an MP4 file, a standard video file.
Good. So indeed, it is possible to include the videos. What will be required from you when you are sending us your slides, the 5 business days before your presentation, you will also be asked to send us your video file, so that we make sure that this is high quality when you record your recording your presentation. Sorry. Yeah, a question that is coming back a few times here is, will the slides of this session be shared? Indeed, the presentation recording will be shared with all the faculty after all sessions have been broadcasted. Can the recordings be done with the MacBook on?
Yes, yeah, that's possible. We will use the system GoToWebinar as we are using now during this webinar. We also do the the recorded presentations inside GoToWebinar, and that will work on Mac and on Windows.
Thank you. A question here about the live program and the timings. The live program is being finalized as we speak, and it will be shared on the WOC 2020 virtual website very shortly. So there you will see that you will be able to see all the sessions, the start and ending times, and already start planning for any sessions you would like to attend, and possibly also your own live time slots if your session is chosen for a live time slot. I'm just reading through a couple of more questions that are coming in, as we still have a few more minutes before we dive into the second part of the presentation. Let us see. Yeah, so indeed, one of the questions is that all the recordings are done individually. So we ask all speakers to book the time slot that is convenient for themselves and record their own talk. We will then, on our side, once we have all the recordings, reassemble these talks to form the final sessions. And of course, we have received a specific order as well for your talks, which is already available on the WOC 2020 virtual website under the sessions per topic. You can see the order of presentation, and that same order will be kept for the final symposia recorded session that will be made available on the WOC 2020 virtual platform. All right. So more questions about these slides. So once again, definitely we will share all this information with you, and as well as further instructions also written, so that we make sure that you have all the tools to prepare your presentation. How long is the time for the recording? As Ron mentioned, we have these are 30-minute time slots, and within this 30 minutes, we count a few minutes for our team and you to check the camera quality, the microphone quality, that we have your slides, setting everything up, giving you control of the slides. And then all the presentations, single presentations that we have in the WOC 2020 program are ranging between 7 minutes and 12 minutes each. So the 30-minute time slots should give you enough time to prepare, settle, record your presentation, and end with a nice recording at the end. Do the slides need to be in 16:9 format?
Yes, the slides need to be in 16:9. 4:3 is also possible, but we prefer 16:9.
Thank you. Another question is regarding the actual final time of your talk. So here, as mentioned, the live program is really being finalized as we speak. So we'll be sending you all the presenters and the moderators a detailed email with the exact timing of your talk. This will of course depend on if your session will have the live Q&A time slots that will have to be integrated or no. So this again will be shared with you in the coming days as soon as possible with the exact duration of your talk. However, it will not be different of what you were the duration that you had originally for your talk at the WOC Physical Congress. Again, another question regarding the PowerPoint presentation and the upload of videos. So with that unique link, will they be able to upload both files at the same time, or do they need to contact the team in some way?
No, with that unique link, you can upload the PowerPoint and your video. Yeah.
Okay, perfect.
I can also see some questions about how to control the slides. We will run the presentation on our computer, and we will give you control over the PowerPoint. So you can control the PowerPoint with your mouse and with your keyboard arrows. So when you want to go to the next slide, you can push the right arrow and you can go to the next slide. So that will be the same as you will normally do on your own computer.
Great. Some more questions about the technicalities and logistics of recording. Are webcams adequate for sound quality versus a dedicated microphone?
It depends on the quality of the webcam, of course, but a dedicated microphone is always better, but a webcam will also work in terms of microphone. It depends on the quality of the webcam.
Okay, and so again, this is really the importance of you connecting on time, the day and the time of your recording, so that we can check this and that everything is working well and what is producing the best quality. Lots of questions coming in, and I think we can still take a few before moving to the next part. And we will also have still time at the end of this session to respond to any pending questions. Is it possible to use Keynote for the presentation?
Yeah, we need to know it in foreign, but yes, it's possible. Yeah.
Okay.
I can see a question about the movies inside the PowerPoint. That's the reason why we ask you to upload also your video. During your recording, we will play the video from your PowerPoint presentation. But afterwards, in the editing of your presentation, we will put on top of that the good quality video, so that we have a good quality of video that is good running. Yeah.
Thank you. An important question here as well. How would a debate session be handled? There should be discussion by a panel after each two talks. So in case of a live session, of a session selected for a live time slot, what will happen is that the moderator will start the session. Then we will play the two pre-recorded presentations of the two first speakers, and then we will have 5-6 minutes for Q&A and interaction at that time. So for a live session, it will really not differ too much of an actual normal debate session that you would have in the physical environment. For a session, debate session that would be recorded only, what will happen is that we will have all the presentations one after the other reassembled, and then we will ask the moderators and the speakers to connect as well to record a 15-minute panel discussion where you can have this interaction that that you would normally have with a live session. All right, I just moved back at the beginning of the list, so need to scroll down a little bit more for the new questions. Can we be two persons to present, Ron? Would that be possible?
I have to, that's a question I will come back later. I cannot give an answer on that now.
Okay, yeah, definitely. Then we look into this and we will come back to you on that question. As so far, it was one presenter for one recording, so we will look into that. Can you please confirm the size of the slides again?
16 by 9.
16 by 9, okay. So again, this will also be provided to you in the form of written instructions when you receive the exact timing of your session and the confirmation of a live time slot or not. All right, we still have a few questions that need an answer, and we will take sufficient time at the end of this session to answer them all. But for the sake of time right now, I will pass the floor to our colleague Avinash. Avinash specializes in adult learning and in the neuroscience of learning design. He has coached many presenters in developing their presentation skills for online and face-to-face environments. And therefore, I will welcome Avinash now to lift the mystery on how to maximize your presentation for an online environment.
Thank you, Diane. Much appreciated for that introduction. I'd just like to ask the team to pass over control so I can share my presentation, please. Thank you very much. Let me just pull that up on the screen. And also just to confirm that you'll be able to see the slides, and there we are. Great, wonderful. Let me just open up my webcam so that you can see me, hopefully. And good.
We can see you, Avinash. Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning, good afternoon, and maybe good evening for some of you. It's a pleasure to be with you today to share some thoughts, tips, advice, best practice guidelines on how to really maximize this experience of a recorded session, which for many of you, I'm sure, might be the very first time. So we'll talk a little bit about that later as well through a poll just to see exactly who has experience in this particular area and who doesn't, and how you feel about it. So with that, I'm just going to turn off my webcam and let's get started. So the good old days, do we remember these? And hopefully these will be coming back very, very soon, and no doubt they will. The time, of course, that we were sitting in an auditorium, and just imagine yourself, for example, just in this moment, you're in the audience at the last Congress, and Professor Jones, but once again, this is a fictitious character in case there's a Professor Jones online, that's just a coincidence. Professor Jones keeps rambling on, going through his PowerPoints, riddled with bullets, full of text, with unbearable visuals to follow. His pace is faster than a speeding train, and at times so dull and slow, you're about to reach for your pillow. Now, that may sound familiar, maybe. It could be quite excruciating, right? And sometimes this tends to happen. So, yes, indeed, we've all been there. But now we're in a situation where we're moving from the physical environment to the digital environment. And so what is the difference? Well, okay, we may hope that we don't get to this stage where, okay, instead of people falling asleep in the chairs, in the auditorium, that they actually fall asleep at their laptop. And of course, that's something we will absolutely avoid when it comes to your recorded sessions and how to be effective to ensure, of course, that your viewers, and now we're going to call them viewers, those delegates that are attending, but they're viewing your sessions, obviously stay engaged for the period of your recording and going through your session. And so what are some of those challenges when it comes to online sessions? Well, several, of course. There are tech issues, technology issues. However, there is, of course, a technology team behind all of this, and therefore that is something that, hopefully that you won't have to worry about at all. Now, the challenges, though, however, which are there, of course, are low energy and reading slides, for example. Maybe there's too dry content, for example, in terms of what's being presented. But I think one of the most biggest challenges that we have at the moment, especially in the world that we're living in terms of the digital age, but also in terms of the current crisis, of course, of having to stay home, are that there are too many distractions, which does influence the level of attention. So, of course, we now are all recognizing this situation where, you're sitting at home, you're doing it right now, probably for most of you, or wherever you are, but there are more distractions than ever before, whether it's children, pets, and of course, that possibility of multitasking. So of course, all of this has an influence when it comes to those people that are engaging and watching, those members, those viewers actually watching your recording, because at any moment something could distract them. So there are, of course, ways, and I want to give you tips and thoughts and ideas in terms of how we can create an effective and impactful recorded session. So let me just now turn over to you for a moment. I have two polls, and I'm just first going to share with you the two questions so that you know what's coming. And then we'll actually activate the poll. The first question is a very simple one. Shouldn't take you long. It's just a one-click response. Is, have you recorded a presentation before? So the response is either yes or no. And the second question that will pop up straight afterwards is, how do you feel about recording your session? Now, I think this is a multiple choice question, so you can select more than one, okay, because you may have different feelings or thoughts about it. You can select 2 or 3 if you want, and those are the responses that you'll have. So I'll ask Ron to actually launch the poll. Ron, can you launch the first one, please? Have you recorded a presentation before? So let's see the responses. Just a few more seconds. I think that's a pretty quick and easy response. So Ron, when we have, there we go. I think we're going to see it right now. So let's see. We have, it's pretty split compared to this morning. We have 55% of you that have recorded and 45% not. This morning, actually, there's 72% that are not recorded. So that's good to know. There's quite a lot of experience there with all of you. Almost half of you have recorded sessions. So that's great. So you know what you're up against, right? Let's launch the second poll, please, Ron. How do you feel about a recorded session? Recording a session. Let's see, we've got the responses coming in. We'll give it a few more seconds. And the results are in. Okay, great. Let's see. Well, the highest level here, confident, 35%. That's great. We have 31%, 31% of you that are anxious, 24% excited, 27% a touch of fear, and 23% uneasy. So obviously a mixture of feelings, but it's good to see that there's a level of confidence. And I think that's what's fantastic. Now, if you have that confidence, you have got that experience, you know what you're up against. For those of you that the 45% of you that have not recorded a session before, and if that also creates some sense of unease, that's why we're here today. I'm here to also share with you some of those tips and recommendations so that you can actually go away and say, yeah, you know what? This was a great experience. And in fact, what's going to be great to know is that there's a lot of similar principles that all of you apply as speakers in past congresses and in other events that you can still apply in a recorded session. So that's the good news. It's not completely different. But let's look at some of those challenges from a speaker point of view that you will have to think about, because this is all about your mindset, to get your mind ready and have that frame of mind so that you can record that perfect session. So the first thing is, of course, you cannot see the audience. When you're recording, But you know what? They are watching you. So always remember, the audience is there, they're watching your session, even if it's recorded and they're watching it obviously a week or two later, they're there. You, as a speaker, of course, do not have any visual cues when you're recording the session. So there's a challenge there with the body language, the emotions from the audience that normally you would get in a physical environment. So of course, that is a challenge. So once again, it's about preparing yourself that, okay, I don't get that energy coming from a room, so how else can I make sure that I'm pumped up and I'm ready to go? Okay, just like you would be in a physical setting. And of course, then the last point here is audience engagement is definitely more difficult. And when it's recorded as a session, it's even harder. But what I can say, and I'll be sharing with you some ideas, is that there is a way to actually engage your audience, even if it's not possible with a poll or a chat box or anything like that. So I'll be sharing with some tips with you so that you can incorporate that in your design of your presentation and your delivery. Now, of course, for those of you that are a little bit fearful, of course, and we all have that feeling, let's face it, it does happen from time to time and maybe more often than not. I would say one of the best things you can do is to have perspective. If you're nervous, if you're a little bit fearful, a little bit uneasy, try to put this situation in perspective. That's what's important. What actually is scarier, in fact, than actually doing this recording after all? For example, swimming with the sharks, for example, is it bungee jumping or is it something else that really, if you really put it into perspective, recording a session after all is really not that bad. So I think perspective is extremely important, and that will help you also get in the right frame of mind, as well as, of course, calming those nerves. So indeed, this is extremely normal, right? Recognize that that is absolutely normal. And it is no different. You probably feel in a similar way, just like when you're going on stage, you may even have those feelings of butterflies in your stomach. As Joan Jett said, the rock star from the past, some of you may like Joan Jett or know her music, she said you want to have butterflies in your stomach, because if you don't, if you walk out on stage complacent, that's not a good thing. And so indeed, this stage now is not a physical stage, but it's the virtual stage. It's the recording. It's the camera that's in front of you. But recognize the fact that those butterflies are still normal. And I think the trick here, the recommendation is try to make sure that you get those butterflies to fly in formation. And how can we do that as a mental state of mind? How can we get them to fly in formation? Well, actually, a politician in the past said it best. I must apologize for making rather a long speech this morning because I didn't have time to prepare a short one, which is quite fascinating when you think about that quote. Time to prepare a short one. And most of you, in fact, all of you, are going to be presenting between 8 and 12 minutes from my understanding. So very similar to what you would be doing in the physical space, you'll have a very similar amount of time for your presentation. So that doesn't change. But what does change is probably the way you prepare your presentation, the way you prepare for a recorded setting compared to a live setting. So preparation, of course, is absolutely key, as always. So that remains the same, actually, as it would be in a physical environment for your presentation. One of the key things here that I recommend is certainly the design and delivery of the presentation. So we're going to dig deeper. And how are we going to do that? Well, it's to serve you a 3-course menu. So the way I've constructed these recommendations and tips for you is basically in 3 different ways as part of this menu. It's structure, it's style, and it's emotions. And if you stick around until the end of the session, I'm going to give you a bonus package. And that is about lights, camera, action, creating a memorable moment of magic, and some tips that will help you to also make sure that recording is as best as it can be. So let's get stuck into our menu. The first course, structure. Let's look at structure. Now, oftentimes we have so much, and all of you as experts in your field, professionals, you have so much knowledge, so much to say, so much to share. The challenge often is that there is too much content. So what can you do? And that actually means that there's potentially a lot of noise that you can actually create here, potentially with too much content. And the other challenge that we face when we think about attention spans. Now, this was a research done by Microsoft. They were saying back in 2000, they found that the attention span of the average human was 12 seconds. And it dropped to 8 seconds in 2013. That's quite a dramatic shift. But what's even more surprising is that a goldfish, apparently, I don't know how they did that research, but apparently has 1 more second attention span than humans. So attention spans, regardless about this study or not, what we do know in today's world is that it absolutely is a challenge to keep people focused. And that is definitely true when we think about recordings. It's why YouTube videos, for example, tend to be very, very short in nature, because people do switch off or they're distracted very quickly. So we have to bear in mind, one of the things for you to keep in mind is that level of attention span. It drops very fast. When you're talking about video and recordings and people watching, the attention span can drop at least very quickly, and after 3 to 4 minutes already the attention span is quite low. And then, okay, maybe it picks up a little bit because you're coming to some real specific content that's of interest, that of course they really want to hear, and ultimately it peaks right towards the end of a session. So keep in mind attention spans, and we'll make sure that obviously we'll talk a little bit about that engagement piece that I talked about. Okay, how can we keep them engaged in the video? So the first tip here is when it comes to your content, and we're thinking about structure right now, of course, as the first part of our menu, is to break content into bite-sized chunks. That chunking technique, which allows for content to be absorbed more easily, it's more manageable, and it's helpful in terms of really fixing into our long-term memory if it's packaged in the right way. And the magic number here, if we think about how would you chunk or package your content, one of the best numbers to think about is 3. The magic number is 3. Because it's been found through research, and if you look all around you in everyday life, especially when it comes to marketing and communications, advertising, for example, even in the media, in newspapers, on TV, etc., that magic number 3 is all around us because it's extremely memorable. Because messaging and packaging things in 3s, for example, reduce, reuse, recycle, first, second, and third. Just do it. All of these phrases, slogans, etc., if you look around you, I'm sure you'll start to recognize that everything is done in 3s. And there's a reason for that, because it's memorable, it's sticky in the mind. So consider packaging by chunking and spacing your content, one block of content, when you design it and structure it, in 3s. Can you make a logical order in 1, 2, 3? Just like a beginning, a middle, and an end. It's very straightforward. It's very simple. But I have to say, it's a great technique to make sure that you're following a certain structure, and it also helps your viewers to keep track of where you've been and where you're going. So where you've been and where you're going, with relevant transitions in between each of your chunked content. And when it also comes to design and structuring your content, think of the outcomes. What are the outcomes that you want those viewers to walk away with? So ask yourself this question when you're preparing. When you're preparing the design of the presentation, ask yourself at the end, the viewer or the delegate here will be able to do what? So one of the techniques to think about is, what will they think, feel, and do? What will they think, feel, and do? When you prepare, think about that. Think, feel, and do as they walk away after they've watched your recording. So that will also help you design effectively the way in which you want to structure and the flow of your content, so that it remains memorable and it keeps them hooked in terms of watching you actually presenting your content. That's what it's all about. So we've talked about structure. That's the first part of our menu. The second course here is about the style. Now, style, this is about, and tip number 2 is about using contrast. Now, our brains are hardwired to look for contrast. And actually, there's a very smart person called von Restorff, and in fact, the von Restorff effect, named after him, explains how we actually remember things that stand out. Now, what are some of the examples? What are those examples around us that we need to be thinking about? Here's some information right here. It's seen on websites. It's a visual that seems like there's a lot of information. Fine. Nothing really stands out for you. But all of a sudden, what happens? You're seeing right in the middle a simple change. And you see right in the middle, your eyes go straight towards the most popular and the way it's being designed. So that is the example of a von Restorff effect. How can you integrate the von Restorff effect, for example, so that your content, if you're using those slides, how can you make it pop, and how can you make it in the forefront? And here are other simple examples from visuals. How you can have all these balloons or all these shoes, they're all the same colors, but all of a sudden your eyes are drawn into the slightly different color and positioning of that red balloon or those pink sneakers, those trainers. Now, oftentimes, many of you use, I saw that in the chat box earlier, you were asking about Keynote or Prezi, PowerPoint, etc. Well, what's interesting is regardless of which tool you use, in the end, the skill also comes down to all of you and how you master the features and functionality of these visual tools. So is PowerPoint or Keynote really the criminal? Or sometimes this is why it's a challenge for us. The reason is because oftentimes we're faced with the first thing is when you click on a new template, this is what you get. And there's a temptation to fill out all of those bullet points and keep those bullet points as bullets and have a lot of text. So again, recommendation, how can we change that? How can we make sure? Because this, of course, certainly is not engaging. And ultimately, this is what we want to avoid. With a lot of text, text after text, slide after slide, this becomes a challenge. Yeah, it's a little bit difficult. So, and the problem with a lot of text is that when we speak, on average, we're speaking at 150 words per minute. But most people read at 250 words per minute. So if you have a lot of text, the chances are they've already read everything on your slide. Even while you're speaking on the first or second bullet point, they've probably reached the end of that slide. And that's when they'll be distracted, and that's when they'll switch off. So engagement is a perfect example of keeping them engaged, is making sure how you work with the visuals that you have. So here's an example of a graph with a lot of content, a lot of data. Of course, in your research, in all the work that you do, there is no doubt that you'll be sharing a lot of research and data, a lot of information. But how can we transform something like this? And how can you take the concept of keeping it clean, making it simple, and having less clutter? And here's a perfect example. That same graph that you just saw a few seconds ago, it's simplifying it. What's the most important thing that you want to share with your research, with your content, from the statistics that you may have, from the research that you're doing? How can you use contrast? How can you use simplicity? How can you use white space? All of this is very important to keep the viewer absolutely focused on where you want them focused on that slide. And using those visuals powerfully, examples. There's two examples that I just shared with you. Very different approach instead of just using a graph. Speaking visually is absolutely a very powerful technique. And speaking visually also is a great way, and I'll talk about storytelling later. But when you think about visual, what does the research tell us? Now, as all of you are ophthalmologists, specialists in your field, you know a lot about visuals, there's no doubt. But what's interesting is when we think about presentations, the visuals can increase recall by up to 65%. If you are just speaking, the recall is about 10%. So there's a 6 times greater increase in recall by absolutely having visuals. And the more visuals you have, the greater chance is, of course, that your viewers will be glued really to your recording and watching you and listening to you, and also keeping their attention on the content that you're sharing. And also visuals, of course, let's face it, you have a lot of powerful visuals with the work that you do, and even the videos. Some of you asked about embedding videos. And of course, that's something you can do from what I understand. Having videos, having the right visuals really does trigger emotions. So it's amazing how just using these kinds of techniques, these tips, for example, with visuals, can really make a difference in creating engagement for those watching your videos. The third part of our menu is all about emotion. And we just talked about emotion, how visuals trigger emotion. But when we think about emotions, John Medina, he's an author of a book called Brain Rules, neuroscientist, and he basically says, emotionally charged events persist much longer in our memories and are recalled with greater accuracy than neutral memories. So emotionally charged events. So how can we trigger the right emotion? Right? How can you trigger that right emotion and use it to help the attendees learn better and to increase their overall engagement during your recorded sessions? You've got tremendous content to share. So there's no doubt they will obviously be interested. That's why they're there. That's why they're watching your recording. But it doesn't mean to say that you can't add a flavor of that emotional touch, for example, through the storytelling, through those elements. And that's the whole point, storytelling. Think about some of those clinical trials, those cases that you want to share. There's tremendous stories in all of that. And crafting a powerful story is a tremendous way of keeping that level of engagement and even adding that touch of emotion into the recorded sessions. Now, voice, just a moment, talking about voice here. The voice tends to be extremely important in the online space, more so than even in the physical space. So use that as a tool. Try to think about your pace, the tone that you're using. What kind of, let's say, feeling do you want to create when you're recording? What's there for the voice that you're going to use? Is it softer? Is it enthusiastic? How do you want to articulate those words? and where do you want to put the emphasis? And repeating what you say obviously sometimes helps to also make things sticky in the mind. So using the voice as a powerful tool is another way to engage and also share that sense of emotion. So moving on into the last phase, which is really that bonus I talked about, right? The lights, camera, and action. So we're moving into balancing from design and now focusing on the delivery. Coming back to communication, this is what it's all about. Professor Albert Mehrabian, in 1972, he was a professor at UCLA. And what he did was he did a study about communication, the impact of communication from person A to person B. And he found that our voice has a 38% impact as a form of communication on the receiver. Our words, surprisingly, have 7%. And our visual has 55% impact. Now, this is more in a face-to-face environment. And what it's telling us is that 90% of impact actually comes from how you communicate your message, not necessarily the what. Now, that does not mean to say that your content is important. It's the most important part of your presentation is your content. But what this is telling us is that, of course, the advice here is the voice and the visual is important. And actually, in the online space, the voice becomes even more important than sometimes the visual does. So I think keeping that in mind is extremely important. Now, when you're on the webcam, for example, remember, you're going to be recorded with the webcam. So your gestures still remain important like they would do in the physical space. And eye contact, looking at the camera and not being distracted by anything else is going to be key so that you remain focused. And again, that voice comes into play as well. So when we think about that recording itself, when you're ready to record, of course, you will have practiced. That's the idea. Practice beforehand. I encourage you that it is important for you to prepare and practice and record yourself. You can do that with your phone. You can do it with an iPad. You can watch yourself so you feel more comfortable. The 55% of you online that have already done that, you know what that feels like. For the 45% of you that have not recorded the session before, I encourage you highly to try and record yourself, watch yourself, become comfortable with listening to your voice and watching yourself. And here are some tips to overcome that camera anxiety. Now, first one, put on your public appearance. Be yourself as you are, that authenticity. You know what to do. You know your content. You are the professional. So just as you would be, the way you would present, the way you would behave, that in the public setting is no different actually than it would be, when you're actually there standing in front of a camera. That would not go away. It's exactly who you are. So don't try to be anybody else. Make the camera your friend. Now, for those of you, as again, doing it for the first time, maybe a little bit uncomfortable that you're looking at this little round pinhole of a camera on your laptop, for example. Well, one of the techniques, a great technique to use to become more comfortable is to actually, for example, take a photograph. Take a photograph of your family, friends, whoever you feel comfortable looking at, and actually taping it or putting it aside by your computer. And so when you're speaking to the computer, to the camera, then actually you're seeing some friendly faces, either stuck on the back of your laptop, just behind the camera, so it's not visible, or just to the side. And that will actually make you feel calmer. And if you do that a few times, then you'll be surprised how comfortable that will make you feel in front of camera. Put your best light forward. Lighting is extremely important. So I'm sure you'll get some more tips about that, maybe from the recording technical briefs. But making sure that, and I'll show you some pictures a little bit later, that lighting is key. Otherwise, we don't make sure that your face is actually seen and that your eyes are also seen on webcams. Speak from your comfort zone. This is what you know. You have that content. You have that knowledge. You have that expertise. That's your comfort zone. So always remember that that's not going to change at all, whether you're in the physical space, and that doesn't change in the virtual space. And don't be too hard on yourself. I mean, for the first time, maybe, when you practice, it may not go so well. That's okay. Second time, it was so-so. Third time lucky. Fantastic. Mute your inner critic. No video is perfect. Authenticity is everything. Relax. Set yourself realistic expectations. That's what really counts. So here are a couple of pictures. Typically, this is what you see. 99% of people in today's world that are on webcams and even recording are looking down. So that is not the recommendation at all. It's not to look down, because that creates an awkward kind of sense that when the viewer is watching, it's there you are looking down on them. So it's a little bit awkward. So there's an example, for example, of this person right here. Or if you wear glasses, be careful as well because of reflections and where the light is. So this is something a little bit more. Now, of course, you've been told as well, it's good to have that, and you need to have that sort of plain background as given by the instructions earlier. But the most important thing in this image is the actual balance of the framing. It's like in thirds. And actually on your camera, in your laptops, you can actually normally pick up where it gives you this grid, this 9 grid, 3 by 3. And then you can put your eyes at that level of the top layer of the grid. That's the perfect position. And there you go with lighting. You know, of course, if you're going to have a solid background, you won't have a window because you'll be backlit and you won't see yourself. So lighting is absolutely key. A word on clothing a little bit here as we come to a close very soon. Attire. What are the things to avoid? Avoid white, super bright colors, reds, yellows, pinks. It will actually wash you out. So I think maybe that may not be the wisest thing. High contrast between colors also probably doesn't work so well on camera. And also wearing too many patterns which could be distracting also for the person viewing your session. So in general, the recommendation to all of you would be to opt for something softer, solid colors, maybe dark deep blue is a good option. So those are simple things, but these simple tips are the ones that make a difference in the overall experience at the end. And indeed, always remember where you are, right? Not now. We all know about this famous image that went viral, Professor David Kelly being interviewed. Of course, you're not being interviewed live recordings, but again, you've got to be aware of your surroundings and make sure that you have a very quiet place to be. Last couple of thoughts as we wrap up. Don't forget to breathe. Before you go in to step into your recording and pressing that record button, take a few deep breaths. I know it sounds obvious, but it really is helpful. It will calm you down. And the other tip that I want to give you is to visualize yourself. Visualize yourself successfully recording a wonderful recording, a powerful recording. Visualize yourself being successful. And that will really help as well in terms of creating something extremely effective. So that is the 3-course menu: the structure, the style, the emotions, and how to best balance the design versus delivery. Good luck to each and every one of you. What's interesting for me is that going from the physical world to the virtual world, all of you have got a lot of experience. That does not go away when it comes to recording sessions at all. In fact, it's to your benefit. You are experts in your field, and these are small little tips that if you take on board, then that's going to make all the difference in terms of making a powerful recorded session. Thank you very much for the time today. I hope that was helpful.
Thank you very much, Avinash. We have no doubt that your presentation helped reduce the level of uncertainty, anxiety, or touch of fear that some of our participants may have had at the beginning of this presentation. So as mentioned earlier, we now have still a couple of minutes to answer any pending questions from our audience. And I will directly start with one of the questions that we did not have time to answer earlier. Is it mandatory to use a headset for recording? So of course I have one today. Avinash doesn't have one. This is a pure choice in terms of quality of sound.
I have a microphone.
You have a microphone. Perfect.
Little one, yeah. They're not too expensive on Amazon, but yeah.
Well, that's always good to know. And yeah, some computers will produce a very clear and very good sound. So please test it at home, and based on that, you can of course make your choice. But it's all about yeah, quality of sound and preference, not aesthetics. Otherwise, I wouldn't have chosen a headset. More questions came in about the logistics, especially indeed slides. Can we use Keynote? Can we use Prezi? Can we use PowerPoint? So we have mentioned that it's possible to use Keynote and PowerPoint. I believe the other programs are also possible, but again, detailed instructions regarding the PowerPoint slides and formats will be provided to you in written with the email that will come to you soon, and I will summarize right after this what are the next steps that you can expect from the team here to finalize all your presentation. There was also an important question about what if we cannot guarantee a stable internet connection. This is of course crucial to be able to deliver a good presentation, is to have a good connection. Do you have maybe any tips there, Ron, from our team, or regarding this?
We always recommend to use a wired internet line. Of course, Wi-Fi is those days also okay, but the wired internet is always more stable. So yeah, the quality of the recording depends on the internet. That's something that we need to know those days.
Indeed, the personal trick is that I always switch off any other device that could use the internet, so that really my own device where I need the full power is actually the one getting the priority with bandwidth.
Yeah, and close all programs on your computer, and close all your programs on your computer. So only open GoToWebinar, and that's it.
Right. Sorry. Thank you, Ron. Who will advance the slides during the recording?
The presenters will advance the slides. We will give them control over the PowerPoint, so they can control the slides by using the keyboard, the arrows on the keyboard, and using their mouse as a mouse pointer.
Perfect. Thank you. A couple of other questions that I noted down while we were jumping into this question and answer session. Will recording time slots be available on weekends? No, the recording time slots are from Monday to Friday, and the recording time slots were planned taking into account, of course, our international faculty, so there will be recording slots in every friendly to every time zones, let's say. But from Monday to Friday.
The time slots are also on Saturday. So
oh, also good news. My apologies. Monday to Saturday. Good.